Welcome everyone joining us on Zoom this evening for the Petersfield Hustings. This is the first of 2 hustings we are holding to enable the Petersfield community to hear the candidates answer questions and thereby help inform the Petersfield electorate prior to casting votes for the 6th May elections. Tonight, Sunday 25th April, is the hustings for County Council candidates in the Petersfield division. Tomorrow evening will be the hustings for City Council candidates in the Petersfield ward elections. I'm Helen Weinstein, asked to be the chair of the Petersfield hustings for 2021 because I'm a local resident with experience in this role and I'm not a member of any political party. My aim is for these hustings to be a fair forum at which Petersfield candidates address their potential voters by answering a series of questions posed by local residents. The questions for County Council candidates tonight will focus on issues in Petersfield where the County Council delivers public services. These are adoption and fostering, care for the vulnerable and elderly, education, library services, policing matters, parking issues, pavements and potholes, roads and traffic management, large-scale strategic planning, and street lighting. The questions for City Council candidates at tomorrow night's hustings cover issues where it is the City Council that delivers services. These hustings are a new event for our community in Petersfield, and the organising team has also provided a website with lots of relevant information, including later a recording of these events. And you can see in the Zoom chat the stream for the address. Importantly, every candidate has not only been invited to attend these hustings, but also to answer the same 6 introductory questions before the hustings. We've had many questions submitted for both hustings, so thank you very much to people who live, volunteer, work or study in Petersfield for engaging with local issues and this event in particular. The order in which the questions will be asked tonight has been ranked according to their importance and specificity to Petersfield and the frequency of submission. Even though we have merged similar questions, far more were submitted than we can pose tonight. All of the questions not asked tonight will nevertheless be sent to all of the candidates. And we really hope they will respond to you, and with their answers, we can put them up promptly on our website. The organising team aims to be fair and transparent, so if you have any concerns or questions, please do submit these via the chat facility on Zoom or by email to petersfield.hustings@gmail.com. Now, the etiquette for the Zoom hustings, as you can see, is that the public is muted and candidates have been briefed beforehand on the process. The moderators helping tonight will be in listening mode, paying attention to the chat room, so please do ask questions and give feedback. Only the moderators will be able to see the feedback and questions submitted via chat. Extra questions will inform the priority given to live questions tonight and will also be emailed afterwards to all the candidates so that they can provide answers to our website prior to the 6th May election day. The candidates standing for County Council in Petersfield are, in alphabetical order, Mark Timothy Argent, Lib Dem, Richard Stewart Howitt, Labour, Shapur Mefta, Conservative, Edwin Wilkinson, Green Party. We're very pleased that 3 of the 4 candidates are attending the live hustings tonight. Ed Wilkinson is not able to attend, but will be given an opportunity to answer all the live questions via email within 24 hours for display on our hustings website. And Shapur Mefta has agreed to be with us very kindly tonight, despite fasting for Ramadan. So we understand around 8:15 p.m, Shapur may close his Zoom camera for a few moments in order to have some sustenance at sundown. May I thank all the candidates for their participation and celebrate with the local community that we are trying something new with these hustings to help advance democracy in Petersfield. Good luck to everybody tonight. To open the hustings, we've asked each candidate to give a 3-minute statement. Candidates, please unmute your microphone only when I state your name, so we don't have too much over talking. And for fairness, the order in which candidates answer is rotated at each question. Please keep an eye on the digital clock. No one will be allowed to speak for more than the allotted time, and you will be muted when the clock hits 0. For opening statements, the candidates will answer in alphabetical order. Mark Argent, Richard Howard, then Shapur Mehta. Mark Argent, please unmute yourself for your opening statement now.
Thank you. I've lived in Cambridge for most of my adult life and recently went back to self-employment just in time to be not eligible for any of the COVID support. It might be worth just naming something from the beginning of the Liberal Constitution, just to give a sense of where we're coming from. Liberal Democrats exist to safeguard and build a free, fair and open society in which we seek to balance the fundamental values of liberty, equality and community, and when nobody is enslaved by poverty, ignorance or conformity. And I'm naming that because it frames lots of our thinking about how we do things, our policies on Europe, on climate change and our community commitment. I suppose top of the list of things that would have been around prior to COVID is climate change. Too urgent to ignore, and any arguments to put it off for economic reasons, it costs more to deal with the longer we wait. That means we need to be thinking about transport, the planning implications in terms of insulation, but also the big planning things in terms of where we put buildings to reduce people's need to travel. And I suppose there's a snapshot of what's on offer if we have a Lib Dem county council. I'd encourage people to look at South Cambs and their zero carbon policy since Lib Dems took control. But we're also facing an economic double whammy because of the consequences both of Brexit and of COVID. In facing that, I need to ask for your trust because we're going to have to be very nimble in terms of how we respond. But I'm particularly conscious that the County Council has huge responsibilities for social care. And it's really important that those who've been badly hit by this don't go on being hit even worse. Having mentioned transport, this is partly about decarbonisation, but it's also because in some ways Cambridge is a victim of its own success, which is why we have problems over congestion and house prices. We need to find a way to spread some of that activity so we don't either choke ourselves off or hit those who actually get left behind by that, by making the inequality problems worse. And having mentioned the community piece, I probably need to pick up, almost as an example of how we think, the Mill Road saga. Because what struck me is that what's been missing in that process is actually proper community consultation. It was brought in under the guise of the COVID regulations, which feels like what happens when you're trying to ram something through and hope nobody gets a chance to think about it again. Well, we could have done so much better if it had actually been a proper process of thinking about who would gain, thinking about who would lose, find ways to make a change work and to mitigate the damage on those who'd lose out from it, and then have a proper consultation and then a trial to see what works and then make a final decision. And we're coming in a very strange place having not done that.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. I appreciate you stopping in time. Richard Howard, please unmute yourself for your opening statement now.
Thank you. Good evening, Helen. Good evening to my fellow candidates, to Mr. Argent, Ramadan Mubarak to Mr. Mehta. And let me say at the beginning, congratulations to the different residents' associations who set up this Hustings. You're doing a service to democracy, which is a great thing. And I want to say that if I'm elected as a county councillor, you have my absolute commitment to work with you and of course with the many groups that we have in Petersfield. And I am a Petersfield person. I've lived here for nearly 20 years. My children went to St Paul's and Parkside schools. I use the Mill Road shops every day. I walk in the cemetery. My doctor's is the Petersfield Medical Centre. I really care about the community that I am seeking to represent. And I am dedicated to public service. I want to be a good local representative for Petersfield, active, accessible, close to the citizens that I seek to represent. And for me, that's not just a promise, it's something that I've done as your member of the European Parliament. And so I stand on my record in having done that, a record of experience. And it's experience that will count too if I'm elected to the county council. I'm used to wading through large documents, dealing with big budgets, forging alliances across party, dealing with professional officers, all of which are skills to be an effective county councillor. And I have personal knowledge and expertise that I hope will help me to make a real contribution in the county council. I ran a disability charity. I feel passionately about the crisis in social care and independent living for people with disabilities and the many elderly, disabled and vulnerable families that we have within Petersfield. And I've worked in recent years in organisations dealing with the climate emergency, and I will work passionately on the county's environmental policies to serve future generations who have a stake in this election, but who don't have a vote. As a Labour Party at this election, we're campaigning for a COVID recovery plan for people and for businesses, to restore the funding cuts to schools and our social services, for net zero by 2030, not by 2050, as the Conservatives suggest. We want the county to start building homes in the way that the city has, a real living wage for all council workers, and an anti-poverty strategy to deal with the deep inequalities we have in Cambridge and Cambridgeshire. Whether your politics are Labour or whether you simply like the record of active, hard work by Labour councillors, city and county in Petersfield, I hope that you will vote for me, for the Labour, on May the 6th.
Again, thank you, Richard, and thank you for keeping to time. Shapur Mefta, please unmute yourself for your opening statement now. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening to everybody and to people that are watching us. As you know, I've been running my business for the last 26 years in Mill Road, Petersfield area, and I count myself as part of the community. And I usually listen people that come to my shop, they talk about all the issues they have, and they talk about the lots of things, which a lot can be done, but the procedures which the local authority is doing those things is taking so long, so people are giving up on the local authorities. I mean, one of the examples was the Mill Road Bridge closure, which has affected lots of businesses and the residents. And as a trader and the chair of Mill Road Trader Association and as a member of the public, I listen to lots of people's view of what they want and what they want to achieve. And these things are not happening that quickly, which people are expecting. And politicians, I mean, maybe me one of them, maybe I don't know, we promise so many things and we are not even providing them with what we are promised. If I get elected, if I promise, I will do it. If I don't, then there should be a reason I have to explain to my people, say, look, the reason which my promise I cannot do it is that, not just let it go and people, they get upset and other things. At the moment, our community is divided in two. Some people, they want this, some people, they don't want that. I mean, I'm talking about Mill Road Bridge because I'm the chair. I'm very passionate about Mill Road Bridge and my community. And we have to learn from our mistake, not to make the same mistake again and again. We are here to make the best for our community. That's what we are here. That's why we are here to talk about it. And we are trying to ask people, if you think we are right, vote for us. If not, vote for the person you think is going to achieve the best for the community. Community needs policing, community needs looking after the elderly people because they need support. Community needs a hell of a lot of support from local authorities or county council. But we need that now, not in a few months later, 4 years later. We have to achieve those things now. So I'm gonna stop now because I only got 6 seconds. Thank you very much indeed for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Shapur. Thank you, all candidates. Now, please can we have the first question read out to us?
Okay, the Mill Road Bridge closure has had big effects on traffic, businesses, noise and air pollution levels, pedestrian and cycle safety. It has divided opinions and communities. What is your long-term vision for how Mill Road should be? And if you don't know yet, how will you decide?
For each candidate, you've 3 minutes to answer, and I'll give a summary of the question when I name you in turn to answer. Richard Howard, how should Mill Road be? Your answer, please. So do unmute yourself, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you. I deeply regret the amount of division that there is over this issue, and I respect the fact that there are very strong views on both sides. I want to be a candidate who will listen to all sides, will bring people together and to represent everyone in Petersfield. There's been a lot of misinformation in this election, and I really do criticise that. This is clearly a decision of the Conservative County Council. And yes, Labour's Linda Jones, the person who's done a brilliant job and I'm hoping to replace, she took the decision to support it for reasons of COVID, for reasons of health safety in this pandemic. And I believe that was an honourable and proper thing to do. But what the County Council said was that within 6 months there would be a review and all the evidence of the effects and the success of doing that would be put before the county and enable us to make a decision. And then the Conservatives broke that promise. And so how will I decide my own position? That will be to look at the evidence, take an evidence-based approach. I understand that many people like the environmental improvements, but when Mr. Mefta says that Mill Road is his community, it's our community. I care passionately about the traders, the independent traders, the ethnic diversity that we have in Mill Road. And I believe many others, whichever side of the argument, do so too. I've got 2 conditions that I want to add to that. First of all, I respect Mr. Mefta. He's running what appears to be a single issue campaign and hoping to get himself elected by doing so. But to all those who are watching, who want the Mill Road Bridge to be reopened, I want to say this was a Conservative decision by a very large majority Conservative County Council. And the idea that electing 1 or 2 extra Conservatives is going to change that decision, you would be rewarding them for a decision that you oppose. But for everyone else, whatever your position on whatever your position is on the bridge, I believe that Petersfield is by far represented by progressive values, by people who don't support what this Conservative government or this Conservative party is doing. This issue over Mill Road might be decided as soon as June. But we're talking about electing a county councillor for 4 years. So I promise to be evidence-based, I promise to be fair, open and honest. But I ask the residents of Petersfield not to vote for a party which has actually been the progenitor of this decision.
Thank you, Richard, for keeping to time. Next, Shapur Mefta, could you unmute yourself, please? And the question is, how should Mill Road be? Your answer, please.
Thank you. First, I just want to say to Richard, I'm not just standing to open the bridge. My goals are to give more to people of Petersfield than just the bridge. The bridge is the main issue because it's divided our community in 2. People are arguing with each. I mean, I've done a lot of canvassing. People are not happy. Neighbors, they don't talk to each other because one wants it open, one wants it closed. It's not just me, I want it open. I want to open it and then go through the proper consultation. Let's give a bit of freedom back to people. Traders are suffering, residents are suffering. I mean, last Friday, they stopped the cameras for, I don't know, half a day. They were doing some digging or whatever. I had at least 20 phone calls from people saying, can we cross the bridge? Can we use our car to cross the bridge? As if there is no camera, by all means. And there were lots of feedback on the social media. They were saying, oh no, not more pollution, less mileage. That means we have to listen to people, not just saying the concept. I'm not going to slack any parties up. I've got enough evidence that a party started it, and the other party, which is supposed to take decision on it, they don't care, because if a party, local party says, please do it, the other party, they are not bothered, because they don't live in that community. They are saying the majority rules. The agenda comes, shall we close the bridge? Yes. Are you happy you're leaving that place? Yes. And then after that, all the other county councillors, if they're conservatives or they Liberal Democrats or whatever, they're just going to raise their hand to go to the next issue. And from my understanding, if you have already looked at that meeting, the Zoom meeting, which was broadcast for the transport committee, the local authority, the county councillor from Ramsey's side said, this is the best for Mill Road. I still have it, I still watch it, and I still regret it, because what he said something on behalf of the community, which not many of them, they were happy to continue with it. My job is to make the community back together. You reunite them, and then make another consultation, proper consultation. Let's see what people they want. If they want it closed, we close it. If they want it open, then we will open it, but we make sure the safety and everything else is going to be there for people to use it. And I'm hoping that we can get this community back together again. Thank you.
Thank you, Shapur. Again, thank you all candidates for keeping to time so far. Mark Argent, your turn next. Please unmute. How should Mill Road be? Your answer, please.
Thank you. You'll have picked up from my opening statement a frustration in the sense that COVID is the worst possible time to have done a trial closure of Mill Road. The world has been radically different, but you can't tell anything about the effect on traffic flows in Cambridge or the quality of life on Mill Road, or indeed the viability of the business on Mill Road, if you do the trial closure whilst we're affected by a major pandemic. I first heard of the possibility of Mill Road being closed essentially because it's a narrow road never built for heavy traffic 20 years ago. So this has been around for a long time. It does seem strange to suddenly introduce it as if we hope people are just going to go with the flow. Personally, I think there's a real possibility for a closed Mill Road being a vibrant community and actually made more vibrant by actually being able to walk and sit on pavements and things. Much has happened when the bridge was closed last time for the building works. So there's potential for things like cafes having seating outside. But as none of that can be tested in the situation we're now in, I too am very much in favour of evidence-based policy. I think closing roads can work in the sense that it can encourage people to use public transport rather than drive. But we needed to trial in non-COVID times to actually tell whether it's worked or whether it simply made the traffic problem on Coldham's Lane worse. So for me, I think that there is a frustration that there wasn't a proper consultation. There is a frustration that there wasn't a real vision of how it could work. There's a frustration that there wasn't the sort of discussion about what's needed to make the businesses on Mill Road work well, because whether or not it's closed, those businesses do a huge amount to shape how Mill Road feels. And we depend on them being viable for Mill Road to be what it is. So I'd be looking for much more work on the viability of the businesses either way, and anything we can do to mitigate the harm caused to people trading on Mill Road. And then a vision for what a Mill Road might look like without through traffic, and then a serious conversation about who might lose from that. Because if we get this one right, we can actually identify who's going to lose and see if there's a way of adjusting some of the proposals to come up with something that actually isn't a sort of 52-48 decision, but is actually something which is widely felt to work for the overwhelming majority of people. Starting from where we are right now, we're in a really difficult place because this has been the wrong time to do it. So I think I would be looking for certainly not an immediate decision, because the world has to get back to non-COVID times before we can make a final decision. And then we need to think very seriously about whether it's right to do a trial reopening or whether we keep with it closed, and very much listen to the community.
Thank you, Mark. Please, could we have the next question, the second question submitted from the public?
Okay, campaign flyers always express support for local businesses and local residents, but one set was printed in Manchester and another in Watford. How will you protect the well-being of Petersfield businesses and residents from conflicting commercial pressures from both inside and especially from outside the city?
Thank you. For answering this question, the candidates again have 3 minutes. Shapur Metfa, you're first this time, please unmute. And here's the question again in summary. How will you protect Petersfield's well-being from outside commercial pressures? Your answer, please.
My policy is, if you can do it locally, because Petersfield, we have to make sure businesses, they can survive and continue to survive and get better, because at the moment, because of the COVID-19 and all the restriction we have, it's put a lot of pressure on the local businesses and everything else. I very support this situation that, everything, if the local people, they can't do it, then goes to the next available people. And the problem is sometimes with the leaflets and flyers, it's out of our hand. We are not in control of what is going to be printed, where it's going to be printed, because the parties, they have their own people they've been using for the last long time, and they keep just sending them to the same people all the time. If I have any power, I would do it locally, definitely between Petersfield or Mill Road, from top to the bottom, which includes Ramsey as well. But as far as I know, it's not a decision which we can do it, but we have to work on it, because it's not easy. It is easy because we have to say, okay, then we don't want that guy to do it, this company to do it, let's go locally. But it's sometimes we don't have that much control over those decisions which is made by other people on our behalf. So that is the only thing I can say. And I'm hoping that gradually we tend to do local and local and local. And that's the only thing I can say at the moment. And I know I've got too much time, but I'm going to stop at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Shapur. It's absolutely fine to speak for less than the 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Mark Argent, please can you unmute? Your next. Again, the question, how will you protect Petersfield's well-being from outside commercial pressures? Your answer, please.
Thank you. And I'm smiling at the comment about leaflets, because Lib Dems aren't being dictated to by the party nationally about where we do things. I think the key point here for printing specifically is about economies of scale, actually where you can best run a printing operation. And I think the sort of large-scale commercial printing operations I've been involved with would be an unwelcome arrival in the middle of Petersfield. Having said that, I think we need to recognize that we're in a world which is becoming much more global. Things like a sort of anti-globalist lurch in the vote for Brexit aren't particularly helpful, but it is a world that's becoming more global. So the sort of business opportunities that are relevant to businesses in the area are actually the ones that are drawing on the fact of being in Petersfield. If we were to go down a sort of protectionist path that means businesses that couldn't survive do survive, we're only pushing off the inevitable for a bit. But there's a whole different conversation about what the businesses are, what the opportunities are, what the creative industries look like in a vibrant local community. And that's beginning to trade on the strengths of Petersfield rather than perceived threats from elsewhere. Some of that Well, some of that is just obvious if you look at the shops. You'll get a much richer variety of food on Mill Road than other streets in Cambridge, which immediately says something. But I'm thinking much more of what the creative industries look like. Fascinating in canvassing the other day to discover that somebody I've been speaking with has moved, because last time I canvassed there, I was surprised to find where she lived. That's a design I'd had some conversations with in the past. Personally, I ran a business doing high quality typography in Petersfield for ages. There's a whole load of stuff goes on which is actually about the uniqueness and the vibrancy of this particular space, taking advantage of the opportunities that are there in terms of kind of the Cambridge effect. So what we should be looking to do is actually to magnify that and therefore think about the sort of business opportunities, the business development possibilities that strengthen both Petersfield itself and Petersfield as part of Cambridge, the city of Cambridge, and actually draw on the richness that's what actually makes this Cambridge such a success. I mean, I said earlier that we're a victim of our own success in terms of house prices and congestion, but actually we need to take advantage of that as well, because that's also what's delivering our stability and our economic future. So this is very much a positive message about enabling us to draw on the strengths of what we have.
Thank you, Mark. Richard Howitt, could you please unmute? You're next. The question again, how will you protect Petersfield's well-being from outside commercial pressures? Your answer, please.
Thanks. Just on the leaflets, historically, we always got them printed at Elysium, which is on the corner of Mill Road and Devonshire Gardens, now sadly has closed. And most of our leaflets, as everyone will see, are not big glossy leaflets. They're actually done by volunteers in the Alexwood Hall in Norfolk Street. It's perhaps what they say rather than how they look that should be rather more important. But this is an important question, and it's about what we can do as county councillors and what the county council can do for business. And if you ask the county council today, what's the answer? Nothing. Labour county councils have economic development strategies. They support their economies. The Conservative County Council in Cambridgeshire does nothing. The only thing that it has is the former Cambridgeshire Housing and Development, an agency which is supposed to invest. It's a huge opportunity to invest in local businesses and to support business development. But instead of that, they retitled it with a fancy title, This Land, it still was supposed to build homes. In 4 years, it's only built 9 homes, totally unaffordable. The cheapest one of those is £600,000. That's doing nothing for housing need in Cambridge or Cambridgeshire. And it's missed all its financial targets. So it's now been turned into a property speculation agency. I'm not making this up. Which is trying to use county resources to invest in land to try and make a profit to help their finances instead of helping local businesses. And one of the biggest investments they've done is to buy the Tesco site from a private landholder in Newmarket Road. You know, how on earth is that helping the small businesses in Petersfield for a county council to do land speculation, buying a Tesco's that's already there? So if I was elected to the county council, I would campaign, and Labour does campaign, for a proper economic development strategy to buy local for our local businesses. It's absolutely right. When I was in the European Parliament, I was part of changing the European procurement directives to enable that to be possible. And we would try and insist that Cambridge County Council did it. And then our local businesses, the traders in Mill Road, yes, but there are many local businesses all around Petersfield who would deserve support and who I would wish to give that support. But the county council that exists today does nothing.
Thank you, Richard. Next, please, can we have the third question from the public?
Thank you. Which support services for the vulnerable, disabled, and elderly are the most important to preserve and to expand?
Thank you. This time, Mark Argent, it's your turn to answer first, so please unmute. And the question in summary is, which support services should be preserved or expanded? Your answer, please.
All of them, certainly all of them need to be preserved. I mean, the idea of cutting back on social care in any form is a bad idea. We've had a long-running issue with the county council with a reluctance to put council tax up to pay for this, and it's therefore a sort of bleeding sore in terms of how we deal with the needs of the most vulnerable. And there's certainly a room for a conversation about the details of that. But the broad trajectory is we have an obligation to look after the most vulnerable in our society, and we should very well do that. I suppose I'm particularly concerned at the moment that COVID has strained all sorts of things for all sorts of people. I'm just thinking of an example of somebody I know who was elderly, instructed to shield at home when COVID first hit, so duly did what he was asked to do, which means I was sort of doing the shopping for him, but then discovered when it was finished that the sort of walking that he'd been used to doing on a daily basis was no longer possible. That sort of knock-on effect doesn't automatically show up in the social care statistics, but means we're going to need a very nimble approach to pick up both the long-range services that have suffered and also the multitude of individual stories that are around in terms of people whose experience of social care is leaving them feeling, or leaving them at a disadvantage. We're going to face a real problem because money is tight on this one, so I can't sort of sit here and gaily say vote for me and there'll be an endless pot of gold. But we're going to need to think very carefully about actually ensuring that we identify and address the needs that are there, both the long-running ones and the things that have been brought into focus with all the vulnerabilities of COVID. And I suppose in a sense, I jump to think about the elderly and those living with disabilities, but I'm also really conscious that those who've been getting particularly hammered in the employment situation is disproportionately skewed towards young people. So we've got people at all stages of life where there are real needs floating around. And we're now facing a situation where the knock-on effect of COVID means we have a restricted budget and a hell of a lot of additional needs to address. So we're going to need to do some very careful thinking. But the idea that any of the groups that are already needing help might lose it in order to direct help to others would very much stick in my throat, because I think we need to be increasing the degree of help for the vulnerable and not decreasing it.
Thank you, Mark. Richard Howard, you're next. Please unmute. The question is, which support services should be preserved or expanded? Your answer, please.
I've already said that I feel passionately about social services. I would hope to serve on the adult committee if I was elected, and I would hope to make a difference. We've seen £16 million of cuts to social care in Cambridgeshire in the last 3 years. And one of the things that the county did that I think was most reprehensible was to remove the minimum income guarantee. And so what that means is that the poorest people were suddenly being forced to pay much more for their social care services, on average a third more, and each of those cuts should be reversed. We also do have to address the devastating impact of COVID. I do congratulate, I've been a very small part, but a part of Petersfield Mutual Aid, and I congratulate all the volunteers in mutual aid around the county, and to be fair, the county officers and many of the staff of the county have done a brilliant job. But there has been a huge problem in our care homes. There are 40 care homes in Cambridge alone, including some in Petersfield, and 40% of excess deaths took place in those care homes, way above the figures elsewhere in the country. And it was Labour that led the call for an inquiry. We've got to learn the lessons of what happened, hold to account the decision makers, but also make sure it doesn't happen again. The COVID pandemic isn't over, and the Conservatives voted down that Labour proposal. And we do have vulnerable people within Petersfield. So there's a group home for highly dependent disabled people, which is in the North Petersfield area. And Linda, I'm hoping to succeed, our Labour County Councillor, got involved with them because they wanted to take away the person, the carer, sleeping in overnight to look after those people, highly dependent people, and just move it with a sort of remote button, and somebody might get in touch. Wholly inappropriate for people with multiple disabilities and special needs. And those are the sorts of cases. There have been other cases in the county, in Ely and St Neots, where there's been abuses within care homes. We have got to uncover and expose the difficulties that there have been in our care homes and do better for them. And we've got to do better for those rising numbers of elderly people. The number of people over 85 has doubled in the last 10 years, will double again in the next 10 years. And people want to live in their own homes or near to their friends and neighbours. We can give them those opportunities, but we have to plan for the housing and for the services to be able to do it. It's a really rich agenda. I really want to get stuck into it. Labour has always stood for social equality, for anti-poverty, and I will do so if elected as your county councillor.
Thank you, Richard. Shapur Mefta, if you could please unmute. And the question again is, which support services should be preserved or expanded? Your answer, please.
I think my honest opinion is all of the social care should be preserved, because I know it's hard, as Richard says, the money is reduction of money by the county and all that, but we have to somehow find the money to support this sort of social preserve of these social things. And I know I've heard from lots of people, they come to my shop, they said they've got rid of the carer because of they can't afford it, we have to look after ourselves now. And I look, and the guy said, I go to knock at different doors to see if they're okay or not. And because of the COVID, this hasn't helped either, because I know lots of elderly people are suffering because they are afraid of leaving the house and going out to socialize and everything else. It's a big concept that we have to pay attention, because these people we are going to look after, they brought us up. We have to give them a better chance of living, not just dump them somewhere, say, okay, you're too old, go to the care home, and that's it. I think we should look at a bigger picture to see how we can help them. If the money is not there, we have to make the money. And then, because they deserve better. No, I'm not saying that they have to, if they can't look after themselves, it's our duty to look after them, not just leave them there to rot or whatever has to be done at the end of it, coughing out of this world. My honest opinion is we have to look into it and do our best to give them what they deserve, not just a number or a name, and that's it. And as I said before, if it comes to it, we all have to work together, all the parties, from the Labour, the Leave, the Greens. We have to find the money to be able to implement these things, because it's easy to say we want to help, but we need the backing and support. I do my best. I mean, I've done the shopping for people, I've done this for that, I move things for people, but it's just me. But as a group of parties or whatever, I think we can achieve a lot more than slagging each other off, saying we can do better if we are in control. At the end of it, it's a situation for everybody, not just for one party say I can do better. We all have to get united to do our best for our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Shapur, and thank you all candidates for answering the questions in a timely way. So we have time for the fourth question, please.
Okay, what are your thoughts on ending segregated education for disabled children and allowing them to attend school with their siblings, friends, and neighbors? Should there be a maximum class size of 20?
Richard Howard, it will be your turn to answer the question first, so please unmute. And the question is, in summary, should disabled children attend mainstream schools, and should all classes be smaller? Your answer, please.
As I've already been talking about, I'm a lifelong disability campaigner, and you'll find that in the European Parliament, I campaigned for legislation across Europe for every parent of a disabled child, every disabled student to be able to choose to go into mainstream education where that is that choice. Sometimes special education is the choice, and we shouldn't criticise that, but there should always be a viable choice with proper support to enable integrated education. I will passionately campaign for that. I will campaign for independent living for people with disabilities, a human rights approach for people with disabilities if I'm elected as a county councillor. But you're right also in your second part of your question to refer to the very serious responsibilities county councillors have with relation to education. In Cambridgeshire, we still have, despite the government's so-called levelling up agenda, something like £3,000 less per pupil compared with the higher funded schools in other parts of the country. It's desperate. Go to St Matthew's School, a brilliant school with superb results, where the Parents Teachers Association has had to be appealed to just keep the school afloat. And our other schools, St Albans and St Paul's, which I was associated with, struggling with the cuts that we've seen in education. And I as a county councillor, if I was elected, would stand by the local schools that we have in the division and do everything possible that I could to assist them, to speak out for them, funding, yes, but other ways like the school street scheme that we brought in for St Matthew's. There are other ways that we can and should try and assist the schools in our division. And can we not forget as well nursery schools? There are state nursery schools left. They deal with the whole community, but particularly with disadvantaged children. And we are privileged within Petersfield to have the Brunswick State Nursery School. And just like the children's centres that went and the children's centre that served Petersfield, if Brunswick is closed, that's it for good in terms of state nursery provision. They've only got one more year of funding. And so one of my priorities, if I was elected as county councillor, would to work with our county, with our nursery school in order to enable it to stay open. We have many other policies. Certainly special needs support from the county has been cut. That should be restored. It's really, really important. We'd like to see free breakfast clubs in every school. We campaigned for the free school meals in the school holidays that the Conservatives resisted. There's so much more we can do in education, and I thank you for taking the opportunity of raising this question with us tonight.
Thank you, Richard. Shapur Mehta, you're next. Should disabled children attend mainstream schools, and should all classes be smaller? Your answer, please.
As a father, yes, because my son was suffering. He was Asperger's, and we were keep trying to push him to go to the mainstream and school. And he went through a lot of problems because of by going to the mainstream schools. He got bullied and he got picked on. He was so many things which I don't want to mention the name of that school, but I had to keep going to that school, say, look, my son is not happy, he's got problem, why you're not looking at it and all that. But at the end, we managed to do it because it's up to mom and dad or the parent to make sure that kid is going to have a good future. And if they leave it with the school or head teacher or whoever they are there, because they are looking after so many students or kids, it's our duty to make sure once our kid leaves the house, goes to that school, he gets the best treatment, the best whatever it is. And these kids with the disability, they have to be in a smaller group to be able to engage better with the life and everything else, because they cannot cope with a bigger group and other things. And I know a lot of people that have this problem, and the kids, they don't want to go to school, or their attitude changes. Say, look, I hate to go to school. I don't want to go there. I'll get bullied. And so much is happening. But it is our responsibility to make sure education is provided, to give them the best chance we can give them to perform and progress. If we just say, look, my son is disabled, I'm not going to do much, he's not going to get improved. He's going to sit there and he's not going to do anything. but it is our parents' duty to push them, move them, and keep going and check to see if he's okay. Otherwise, it's a big, we call it big, it's a huge place everywhere. And to be able to just look after one kid is not going to be they can't cope with it. So we have to show that it is our duty. Definitely they have to go to mainstream, make sure they are in the smaller classes, and then they will be looked after better by the teachers or the support teachers or whatever it is. And if I get elected, I'll put my emphasis on that, because I want to see a better future for those disabled people, which they want to get a better life for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Shapur. Mark Argent, you're next. Please unmute. The question: should disabled children attend mainstream schools, and should all classes be smaller? Your answer, please.
Thank you. I suppose I have to start with a very mundane comment, which is that the rise of academies means that county councils no longer have the sort of level of control over education county-wide that they once did. So some of this now falls outside the range of the county council, or it means the county council has less influence than it would once have done. Having said that, we are on the point about class sizes. That political change means we have less control than we might once have done. But I'm very conscious that the budget for children with special educational needs and disabilities has now a £7 million black hole in it. So this is one of the many areas where there's been inadequate funding on social care. That clearly needs to be reversed, and that's partly a justice issue for the children directly affected. But there's a much broader educational piece here, which is that if you segregate off people who are, quote, disabled, you reinforce a sense of them being in some sense deficient. Whereas part of the general sort of educational process that's about educating people rather than just book learning is about learning to be with people of different abilities, learning to see the value of somebody who might have a label disabled stuck on them, when all it really means is that there is a difference. So in many ways, there's a very strong educational argument for differently abled children to be in mainstream schooling as far as possible. And the as far as possible piece is just a recognition that there will be exceptions, but the fact that there are exceptions doesn't mean that no child affected by disability can be in mainstream schooling. So yes, I'm very much sympathetic to the idea of smaller class sizes and not having children with disabilities hived off into a segregated stream. But I'm also very mindful of the limits on, or how much of this is outside our county council control, and that's because of decisions by governments of both the big parties over the years, and also of the real funding issues we're dealing with. But just we'll finish with a one-sentence quote out of the Lib Dem manifesto. Quote, "A Liberal Democrat-run Cambridgeshire will lobby relentlessly for funding for Cambridge's most vulnerable children who deserve better." Full stop.
Thank you, Mark. All candidates, thank you so much for answering within time. We will now have the fifth and last question. Please read it out.
Okay. What do you think of local library and school library services? And what should become of the listed old library building by the depot site on Mill Road?
We were to have Shapur Mefta answer this question, but it's just coincided with sundown for ending Ramadan. So I'm going to ask Mark Argent, could you please unmute and answer this question first? The question is, what about library services in Petersfield and the usage of the old library building by the depot ironworks site? Thank you. Please answer now.
Thank you. in some senses, Cambridge is a very atypical place in terms of other library provision. And in some senses, Petersfield, this kind of explains why the old library closed. Petersfield is no great distance from the library in Lion Yard. So in some senses, the priority is securing the central library rather than library provision within Petersfield. The old library building, fascinating to have it turned into a centre of worship. I appreciate that there are planning issues around, or building issues around that, but in a sense, sorry to see that ceasing to be the case. In brackets, previously I was Secretary of the East of England Faiths Council. I'm very conscious of the needs of minority faiths for worship space. So in a sense, that seemed a very good use of the available space. At the moment, I'm not up to speed on the planning aspect of that, largely because it's a city council thing rather than a county thing. But I'm looking for use for that space which is consistent with the spirit of it being public space. So therefore use which benefits the community, which is also subject to how you cope with the eccentricities of a Victorian building that was probably has lasted a lot longer than those who originally built it envisaged. And I'll pass on at this point.
Thank you, Mark. Richard Howard, could I ask you to unmute next and to answer the question about library services in Petersfield? Could you answer, please, about the library services in Petersfield, including schools, and could the listed old library building by the depot site now become a library again? Your answer, please.
Well, firstly, as a parent, I went with my children to the Central Library, and when that was closed, people won't remember that. We went to Rock Road, and I think a library service is a fantastic thing, encouraging children to read, and of course, for people who can less afford it, those library services are absolutely vital. In recent years, the County Council has been moving towards the libraries being community hubs. I've had a little bit to do with that. And it's a great idea, and Labour actually says we will accelerate that if we are elected in the county council. But what worries me again is that under the current policies of the county council, once again, it's about making money rather than providing services to people who most need it. So for example, there's a system where you could go in and use the internet for free, and the Conservatives brought in that it was just for, that you would have to pay for it. Labour had to campaign against that. Ultimately, we won that campaign, and the first 30 minutes have become free again. But it really rather does illustrate how much the county councils exist today. It's about simply making money. It's not about providing services to people. Now, on the old library in Mill Road, Linda again was very active in getting refurbishment of the building. I agree. I think that the county, what they did, they gave a full repair to the Indian Cultural Association, which they would never be able to have raised the money for the structural repairs. Yes, maintain it, paint it and maintain it, but not to do the structural repairs to the building. And so, of course, it's no surprise then when they've just run out of money to be able to maintain it. What the county plans to do at the moment is to use it for their offices. And yet it's a community resource. It's in a prominent place on Mill Road. It should be used for public access. And if I'm elected as a county councillor, I will absolutely be pressing for that. And I would like to congratulate Piero for his campaign to keep the Hindu sculptures. It's a fantastic campaign that's reached enough money to preserve them. And I've been talking with Lewis Herbert, our city council leader, about which place could be found to provide a proper, a respectful, it's a religious icon, but also a prominent place for a wonderful piece of sculpture and art to be maintained. So libraries are a really important service for people particularly who can't afford to go and buy books or access them electronically. Let's work to keep them, and let's work to keep the old library in Mill Road as a source for the public, a public space, which it always was and always should be.
Thank you, Richard. Shapur Mefta, would you like to unmute? And the longer question, which you might not have heard fully, is what do you think of local library and school library services? Could the listed old library building by the depot site now become a library again? Your answer, please.
Okay. I remember when I used to be a little small young lad, I used to go to libraries. I used to enjoy going there, pick a book up and read it, and then go some other places. The library in Petersfield, which used to be Indian community and is closed, is handed back to county to build it and do it up to become offices and community center. It was, I think, to keep the cost, it was a bit too much cost to do it up and everything else. And the communities, I don't know why the Indian community center couldn't afford to do the repairs and keep it going. Because as Richard said, Mill Road Traders, which Piero is part of it, he secured the deal for those artwork. And hopefully it's going to be preserved and it's going to be displayed in Petersfield somewhere nice, so everybody can enjoy it. And at the same time, the Indian community from everywhere, they were offering money to preserve this. I mean, if they were in problem, they could have asked for help long time ago to could have, because I used to be a city councillor at that time. I remember to do the repairs and everything else, they were quoted around about 300, 200,000 pounds to do the job at that time. And they said they don't have the money and they gradually this is gonna come out and they're gonna give the building back. I love to see that place, a part of it becomes part of the community for the people of Petersfield or whoever goes inside that building as a library, meeting place, social gathering for people of both sides to get reunited and go inside and enjoy as a library and everything. If I get elected, definitely I'm going to put my foot down. A part of it should become a community center which is accessible by all the members of Petersfield and Mill Road and everybody. And let's hope that we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shapur. Many thanks to all the candidates for your answers and to the public for an excellent set of questions. Next, we've asked each candidate, well, I'll ask you in alphabetical order. I'll ask each candidate in alphabetical order to make a closing statement of 1 minute to say why the public should vote for them. Mark Argent, please unmute and make your closing statement now.
Thank you. This is an extraordinary election. It's an election in which we have the real prospects of Liberal Democrats taking control of the elected Mayor of Cambridgeshire, the Police and Crime Commissioner, the County Council and the City Council. That alignment creates all sorts of possibilities to enable us to build a fairer and greener Cambridgeshire. Personally, my background is partly political, partly apolitical. I mentioned a few minutes ago my involvement in the East of England Faiths Council a long time ago, which was very much about bridge building, enabling things to happen, building up social capital and community. We have an extraordinary opportunity now to make a radical change by actually having the same party running across all of these different levels, giving us a very different approach to governance, a much higher level of consultation, discussion, responsiveness to community. I'd urge you to vote Liberal Democrat in this election.
Thank you, Mark. Richard Howard, you're next. Please can you unmute and make your closing statement now, please.
Well, thanks very much to everyone. I'm sorry the Green Party didn't join us. Mr. Mefta, I believe you're sincere, but when you say they're going to be more social services and smaller class sizes, your party has already made 10 million cuts this year and wants to make 30 million next year. It's not going to happen. To Mr. Argent, we agree on a lot. But you're asking for more, more consultation and more trials on Mill Road. That we've got 4,000 people who've taken part in the consultation. This needs to actually to be resolved. And when you put around a leaflet, who can you trust to run Petersfield, wherever it was printed and however glossy it is, you know, I think there are Tory sleeves issues that you could raise, but to attack the Labour Party on that, hard-working councillors, I'm sorry, you're wrong to do so. In this election, I am the local candidate, the only person who lives in Petersfield. I am the experienced candidate, and I will be the active, honest, open, local, hard-working candidate if you elect me as your county councillor.
Thank you, Richard, just on time. So Shapur Mefta, you're the next. Thank you for unmuting. Your closing statement, please.
As a chairman of Mill Road Traders Association and ambassador for the White Ribbon campaign against domestic violence and abuse, I feel confident in my ability to listen and help people as much as I can. I also have previous experience of being a city councillor, so I have some understanding of the way the system is supposed to work, all of which stands me in a good state if I were to be elected. Many local people, both residents and traders, find their way to my shop. They feel able to discuss their concerns and opinions on issues that affect them and their community. Whether I'm successful or not in being elected, I will continue to use my shop as a community hub where people can come at any time to discuss things that matters to them. Rest assured that the people of this community will always have my loyalty and support. Thank you. 1 minute.
Thank you, Shapur, and thank you to all the candidates for being so engaged tonight and to the public for participating with the process. A special thanks to the moderators and to Val and to Pete in particular for your commitment and to make this event and the website happen. To all participants tonight, do please feedback on how we can make things go better next time. We've got another hustings tomorrow night for City Council. Send in further questions and issues you would like to have addressed by us and by candidates on the website so we can follow up from tonight. These hustings are a new event for our community in Petersfield, and the organising team have also provided an excellent website with the information that shows the bewildering boundaries of Petersfield with some excellent maps. We have the public service areas listed for county and city councils that are very useful, and the names of the candidates and their parties and their statements. Because importantly, every candidate has not only been invited to attend these hustings, but you'll also find on the website that each candidate has been invited to answer the same 6 introductory questions before the hustings. Now, after this hustings, candidates standing for elections who do not attend the live hustings will also be invited, in the interest of fairness, to provide answers to the questions via email so that these can be displayed on the website to ensure that as organisers, we've provided as much information as we can about the candidates for our local elections for Petersfield. Plus, as there have been many more questions tonight than the live hustings will allow time for, these extra questions will be emailed afterwards to you, the candidates, to all the relevant candidates, so that these answers can also be added to the website. So please be alert and see if you can answer that list of additional questions as soon as possible. We expect that the Petersfield hustings will be an extremely useful resource, not only up to the 6th May election, but afterwards, in order to follow up with candidates on the priority issues raised by local residents. Our aim as an organising team for the Petersfield hustings is that this is not just an ephemeral event, but the accompanying website means that we are providing a permanent record that will be of long-term benefit to the Petersfield community. Please do return for the Petersfield hustings Zoom meeting with the candidates for City Council, which will be at 7:30 p.m. tomorrow, Monday, 26th April. The Zoom link will be uploaded tomorrow on the Petersfield hustings website. Thank you again to everyone, to all the candidates who participated and to the public tonight. And we hope you will come back tomorrow evening. Thank you.